IQ is subjective and genes aren't the only factor, says Dr. Holliday. No, IQ is an objective measure of a certain type of intelligence. There are many types of intelligence. There's emotional intelligence, there's literary intelligence, artistic intelligence, verbal intelligence. There's many different types of intelligence. IQ, as is conventionally understood, is a measure of a specific type of intelligence, which is pattern recognition, logical relations, and maybe some math. So IQ, the IQ test is a real thing. It is not subjective. Yeah, depending on what kind of test, the numbers might vary in terms of a score a person gets. A person might take an IQ test. One particular IQ test can score like 100, and then take another IQ test can score 115. So there is variability in IQ score. But is IQ testing latching on to an aspect of human cognition? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And there are differences that you can track across countries. There are differences that you can track across religions. There are differences that you can track across races. You are not doing yourself or Muslims any favors by denying this kind of IQ science, because it's very robust. The data is very robust. And the only people who deny this are libtards who are denying it on the basis of there's a massive censorship blanket over any research into this. So the research that has been done is usually decades old before this kind of censorship came into place because of politically correct reasons. And there's all this material, debunking IQ science. Like, it hasn't been debunked. It hasn't been debunked at all. This is a reality. So stop coping about this. You are only coping about it because you have internalized this idea that IQ is so important and being able to do math and science is so important to the human race. You've internalized that, and now you are victim to that. You are a victim because the science says that Muslim countries are lower IQ. That is a fact. That is a fact. And there are many reasons why this is the case. And what's interesting, and this is what I want to talk about in this stream, and I've talked about it in previous streams, my students, the ones who have studied with me closely, they're more familiar with this material because I've taught it to them through Alesna Institute. Alesna is my online learning platform. Look at the research within modern psychology on Western psychology versus non-Western psychology. Western psychology is very different. The Western mind, the way that Westerners think, is very different in significant ways in terms of morality, in terms of belief in God, in terms of social function and how you deal with other members of society versus members of your family. The Western mind is very different. Their psychology is very different from non-Westerners. And so in the field of psychology and anthropology and intellectual history, they're trying to figure out, why is this the case? Why do Westerners have something called weird? Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic. Weird psychology. Why did that psychology arise in the West? Why did the Western mind evolve like that in the West, and that didn't evolve in other places in the world, in the non-West, in the Muslim world, for example, or the East Asian world? And this is because weird psychology actually produces more technology, inventions, mathematical, empirical science. That's the scientific revolution, which happened in Europe. That produces the industrial revolution, which happened in Europe before it happened anywhere else. Why? What is the reason? It has to do with weird psychology. So what causes weird psychology? It seems that it's biological, partly biological, but there's also a sociological factor, social evolution, certain practices. And then one of the big factors pointed to by Joseph Heinrich, Harvard anthropologist, and I don't think that Andrew Wilson is aware of this research, because if he were, maybe he would have cited it. But Joseph Heinrich's argument actually is that the reason that the West developed science and industrialized before anyone else, it actually does have to do with cousin marriage. It actually does have to do with cousin marriage. And it's not as simplistic as an argument as Andrew Wilson made, but what Joseph Heinrich says is that, and he has this thick book, The Weirdest People in the World, and you should read it. It's like a series of books. The first was The Secret of Our Success, The Secret of Western Success, Economic Progress. What's the secret? That's the first book. And then the second is The Weirdest People in the World, and that's the more substantive, thicker book where he really brings this whole thesis together. And he says the thing that really triggered the West to move along this different path from the rest of the world, you'll never guess. You'll never guess what it was. It was banning cousin marriage. It was banning cousin marriage and banning polygamy, a man having multiple wives. These two things set the West down a path, this trajectory of social evolution that increased IQ after 500 years, 600 years, that led to the Reformation, that led to the Enlightenment, that led to the scientific revolution. All of these moral and scientific values, all these changes, these revolutionary changes, it actually originates from banning cousin marriage by the church, around the 4th and 5th centuries. So interesting, right? It's very interesting. And this is like robust research. Joseph Heinrich himself, I believe he's Jewish, but he's making a very interesting argument. And he justified, he gives a causal chain, like what causally happened. And he points out that when you ban cousin marriage, because being able to marry your cousin actually is how to make your family stronger. It makes the family unit stronger. It makes the family unit more cohesive because you're keeping wealth within your family, within your close family, and you can therefore rely more on your family for things that you need for survival, for resources. You're going to be more close knit, and then your family will be stable enough so that it can expand. Like you can have more family members, and then also if you're practicing polygamy and a man can have multiple wives, you're going to have very big, strong, robust family networks. These kinship networks are going to be very strong within society, and your family is going to be your society is going to be a kinship-based society. That's going to be the building blocks of your society, and that has been the norm for all of these cultures. All of these cultures throughout history. But then the church comes along, and the church says, actually, this is incest. It's not in the Bible. It's not Jesus that's banning cousin marriage. But we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to ban, and as Andrew mentioned, we're going to give dispensations for the royals. But generally, we're going to consider cousin marriage to be incest to the 4th cousin. And in some churches, it was even to the 7th cousin. Even your 7th cousin, you can't marry. Otherwise, that's incest. You're going to be excommunicated from the church. So what does this one doctrine do to European society? Well, over the decades, centuries, what happens are that family sizes get smaller and smaller and smaller. And no longer do you have these robust kinship networks. You increasingly have to rely for your needs. You have to rely on non-family. You have to rely on people who are not actually related to you. And that level of trust that develops allows European societies to create bureaucracies or larger institutions, state institutions and networks. And those institutions can bring the resources needed for things like scientific research. And then so this is like a snowball effect that eventually leads to the scientific revolution. But there's a payoff. The payoff is that you're increasing the IQ. You're increasing people's weird psychology. Okay, so it's not just IQ, it's other values as well that are being heightened. Like your whole morality becomes one based on freedom, inequality, and kindness. That becomes the basis of your morality. Whereas human morality is more expansive than just being nice to other people and making sure everything is fair. There's other moral foundations like respect for authority, like preference for your in-group, abiding and respecting what is sacred, avoiding what is taboo. Like human moral psychology is much more expansive than just being fair and kind. But you see those who have the weird psychology, the Western psychology, they prioritize fairness and kindness and not harming others above everything else. So is it a surprise that liberalism, which says that we have to maximize freedom and equality, and the most important principle is the harm principle, do no harm, these things are the end-all be-all of morality, is it a surprise that liberal system arises in the West? No, it's coming from a weird psychology. It's coming from the weird psychology, from the higher IQ. The higher IQ means what? You have more critical reasoning skills. You are more empirically driven. You have more mathematical skills. But there's a cost to that. There's a cost. You're going to have more doubts about God. You're going to have more doubts about something like homosexuality is wrong. You as a higher IQ person are going to be less likely to reject homosexuality. Why? Well, what is the harm if it's two consenting adults? Who's actually being harmed here? It seems like you're actually increasing your pleasure. If two homosexuals get together, what's wrong with that? The non-Western, non-weird psychology immediately recognizes, no, this is disgusting. This is perverse, and rejects it. Remember the graphic that I showed, the chart where the acceptance of homosexuality was much higher in the Christian countries because the Christians are more easily secularized. So anyway, this is a big topic, and it's all of these connections are there. And, I would have to dedicate a whole course to going through all of the details, but I'm just giving you a bird's eye view. So yeah, you're getting the high IQ, you're getting the scientific revolution, but you're also getting atheism. You're also getting more critical thinking, but critical thinking means you're going to be more likely to reject God. You're going to be more likely to reject revelation. You're going to be more likely to reject traditional values. You're going to be more likely to adopt a kind of liberal maximalism, where you have to maximize individual pleasure, individual liberty, and equality. You're more likely to accept that, which destroys society, which leads to the dystopia in which we live. So you have to have both. You have to have, okay, high IQ, that has some pros, that has some good aspects, but it also comes with dystopia. So which one's ultimately better? That's the type of analysis that we should do, instead of this kind of idiotic knee-jerk reaction like, no, IQ is subjective. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? When you say that, you make Muslims look really dumb. Like, you're not defending Islam when you say that. You're just buying into their standard.